Our City Council is now in session pursuant to RCW 42.30.1111I. The City Council will now enter into an executive session to discuss potential litigation. The executive session is slated to last approximately 1 hour until 7 p.m. Kenmore City Council is exiting executive session and adjourning our special meeting. I am calling the regular meeting to order. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember Culver,
Present.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Councilmember Sassen,
Here.
Councilmember Shrubnik. Here. Councilmember Lutzis,
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Here.
Mayor Herbig,
Here.
all present.
All right, next on the agenda, if we could take the conversations outside, please. Next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the city of Kenmore is situated upon the ancestral lands of the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Sauksuatl, Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, and other tribes who are part of the Coast Salish peoples. We recognize and express our deepest respect for their enduring stewardship and profound relationship with this land, which they have cherished and protected since time immemorial. We honor the First Peoples, acknowledge their vibrant cultures, and commit ourselves to learning from their wisdom in our journey to promote justice, equity, and mutual understanding. We pledge to stand alongside these communities in acknowledging past injustices and working towards a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land. And would you all please stand and join me in the flag salute? Next on the agenda is agenda approval. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move. Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. The chair would also entertain a motion to approve the city's participation in the Johnson & Johnson, to add this motion to the consent agenda. A motion to approve the city's participation in the Johnson & Johnson opioid settlement with the state of Washington, authorize the city manager or designee to execute the necessary settlement participation form and take all steps necessary for the city to participate in the settlement.
So moved. Second.
All right. Motion and second on the amendment to the agenda. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, that brings us back to the main motion, which is agenda approval. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Agenda stands approved. City manager, where is the fun?
So where's the fun was the Love Where You Live project. So I want to give a report out on the 4 workshops that we held in Kenmore, different venues. We had one at Kenmore Middle School, one at the community club, one at the hangar, and one at Morelands Elementary School. And about 210 people attended total between the 4 events. So we're really happy with that attendance. The hangar was the most well-attended, but all of the workshops had at least 30 attendees. So you'll see some pictures here of the fun and colorful work that people did with their hands and imaginations to build 3-dimensional models of what they wanted to see for the future of downtown and also Lake Point. And we were really happy to see all the great questions that people were asking and the conversations that were had. We had Hank Heron, our new mascot, made his debut at the first event. You can see him there with Mayor Herbig, all smiles. And we will be organizing all the input that was received at the workshops into a report, and we'll bring that back to council in April. And lastly, I just want to thank all of the city staff who pitched in. This was a huge labor of love. Many, many people were involved in the planning and the effort, and it was a great team effort, and just really appreciate all of everyone who came and provided input and all of our city team who were part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Those were great events. Next on the agenda is public comment. We welcome people to the council's meeting. Please address your comments to the mayor and the council. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. If there are more than 20 speakers, time will be reduced down to 2 minutes per speaker. The clerk will call your name when it is your turn. The presiding officer may choose to alternate between in-person and online comments. Please state your name and city of residence and keep within the allotted time. To make every person feel welcome and safe here, please refrain from booing, clapping, heckling, yelling, or other interruptions. The meeting is recorded for transparency. Thank you for being here and for sharing your input respectfully. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We have 2 individuals signed up for on-site public comment. Nathan McDonald, followed by Carl Michaelman.
Nathan McDonald, Kenmore citizen. I had high hopes when I heard the city was conducting 4 Love Where You Live meetings. I was under the impression that these events would build on the data-driven survey that stated, quote, "In terms of intensity, maintaining public safety dwarfs other priorities for the city, followed by attracting new businesses and jobs and maintaining public infrastructure like roads and parks," end quote. I attended the event at Kenmore Middle School, which had absolutely nothing to do with the survey or its prioritized results. Instead, the city trotted out its same tired play table-sized maps along with children's blocks and other items more suited to a kindergarten class than a city outreach program. The vibe expressed the same level of seriousness as the taping of Wheel of Fortune. The primary takeaway was that this was a make-work event to provide overtime for the city's hourly workers who attended. This is emblematic of the decaying leadership culture prevalent in our society and Kenmore specifically. The city faces a dire budgetary crisis, which the council has pawned off on an unqualified financial sustainability task force. The takeaways from these meetings, which I have watched, is a masterclass in issue avoidance, protection of sacred cows, and novel means to further tax our overburdened citizenry. The council should be handling this crucial issue rather than unelected social activists. The albatross hanging around the city's financial neck is the Climate Action Plan. Rather than pursue low-cost reputation enhancement, such as offering platitudes on social media, the city has codified a policy of high-cost reputation enhancement on the backs of taxpayers. The idea that a city of 6 square miles and 25,000 citizens can affect the global environment drips with hubris and arrogance. 3 FTEs are tasked with reducing Kenmore's impact when China is constructing enough coal-fired power plants to generate 360 gigawatts, and Germany transitions from natural gas-fired power plants to lignite, one of the dirtiest energy resources on the planet. It would be laughable if it wasn't so sad. While some may wish it not to be so, cheap energy is the lifeblood of a developed existence. You are tilting at windmills, except that the best way to resolve the city's budget shortfall is to first eliminate the absurd FTE positions that will accomplish nothing but artificially enhance the reputation of the city's environmental credentials. Hard times are likely on the horizon. Perhaps they can be put off by the hard choices you must make. Step up and lead like the responsible and serious leaders you claim to be.
Carl Michelman.
Hello, Council. Carl Michelman, Briar, Washington, but I do own a business and property in Kenmore. So that was interesting what he just said. But the bigger part is, you guys must be feckless. You must be irresponsible. That's what I'm hearing. But you know what else I'm hearing? I'm hearing the citizens of Kenmore are feckless and irresponsible because we were insulted, not by our own King County executive, but also by our own governor. My question to you folks are, what are you going to do about it? You're going to sit there and go ahead and let them continue to discount us? I told you this before, democracy. Democracy, it worked here. You guys made a hard decision. And Melanie, my hat's off to you. You were the only one who had some chutzpah to really say what's on your mind. I'm very proud of you. But what's happening is, what I don't like is how you put this to the wayside. I called Rod Dembowski, and he's just been avoiding me. Because here's my attitude. No one said anything to Dowd, so they must feel the same way. That they had to go ahead and take legislation, I might have the number wrong, but 1274. That is dictatorship. That's Hitler. And just to let you know, Mr. Culver, you keep lobbying for this when the city doesn't want it. And you know, it'd be nice if you took off that mask so I could see you. Because that's what you're wearing, a mask of what's going on here. You're in the wrong place. I asked the city council to do not let this lie by the side and let them go ahead and insult us. It doesn't work that way. But until then, okay, when people start insulting you, I'm hearing it's okay to insult you. The only thing that's really getting me, they're insulting everybody else. When Constantine said we're irresponsible, the city council is irresponsible, last time I checked, the people voted the city council. Is that correct? So that means you all are
Thank you.
irresponsible. Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes on-site public comments. Can we move on to virtual?
Yes.
We have one virtual public comment that has pre-registered. Give me one moment. Jack Hartsock. Jack, are you there? Jack, if you're able to unmute. Last call for Jack Hartsock.
All right, that concludes public comment. Mr. Hartsock is encouraged to send in written comment to the council. Next on the agenda is the amended consent agenda. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda stands approved. Next up, we have a presentation recognizing outgoing staff. Stephanie?
That's going to be Melinda Morel is going to come and present to our longtime employee, Brian Randall, who we are going to miss very much and who is leaving us to go, he got a promotion to work at the city of Duval. So our loss is their gain, and we will miss you very much, and we thank Brian for his service.
So it was fortunate we had the chance this morning to acknowledge Brian at our all-staff meeting, so that was really great. We had some cake and celebrated his 18 years with the city, and he is the accountant here and reports to me, so I've had the pleasure of working with him for just about exactly a year, a little bit over. Pretty shocked when he told me he was leaving, so we wish him well at the city of Duval, and he has been a jack of many things, not just accounting for the city, and I know he's spoken and dealt with every single person here at the city. So it'd be very, very much missed. And so we got him this lovely plaque to honor him. So this is for you, Brian. Congratulations.
I'm definitely a man of a few words, but I definitely have enjoyed the last 18 years working for Kenmore and all the challenges and all the accomplishments I've had, and I will continue to be a Kenmore resident, but seeing everything that goes on in the city. Thank you. Last 18 years.
Thank you. I know we all really appreciate the work you've put in and jumping in and helping out with the clerk work when we've needed that. It's really helped make everything work, everything just go really smoothly. And just thank you so much for your service. Wish you the best. Next on the agenda Public Records Request Update presented by Public Records Officer Teresa McAllister and Deputy City Clerk Michelle King.
And Mayor, if I may, I just wanted to say that we are committed to every year providing you all with this update. And this is not the first time you'll hear this information, but we think it's important for our community and our council to understand about public records. I'm so happy to have Michelle and Teresa presenting.
Good evening. Good evening, City Council members. I'm happy to be here tonight. I'm Teresa McAllister, Administrative Specialist and the Public Records Officer for the city. I'm also a proud member of the City Manager's Department team. I'm joined here by Michelle, and she's going to go ahead and introduce herself.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. Fun to be in front of you this evening instead of just in the background. Michelle King, I'm the Deputy City Clerk, and beyond those duties, I am also the backup support to the Public Records Officer. We are here tonight to give you a 2023 update for the Kenmore's public records requests. So here is an overview of tonight's presentation. We'll do a quick review of the Washington State Public Records Act. In January, you had a more extensive training with Morgan Damerow from the Attorney General's office, so hopefully everything here will be a review for you. Next, we'll go over the life of a public records request. We'll discuss the actual process of a typical request, as well as providing you some data from this past year, 2023. And lastly, we will take any questions or comments, but feel free to ask questions throughout if that is easier. So the Public Records Act, or PRA, as you'll hear us say throughout, provides the rules for public access to all records retained by state and local agencies. A public record is any writing that is prepared, owned, used, or retained by the city related to the conduct of the city. And with very few exceptions, city public records have to be made available for the public to access. The PRA provides agencies with the framework for the disclosure of public records, and it also promotes the public policy of open and accountable government.
The PRA, under the PRA, the city must appoint a public records officer, publish rules of procedure to inform the public how to access public records or how the access to public records will be accomplished. These rules are published in the Kenmore Municipal Code, Chapter 1.10. A copy of the rules can be requested at the reception desk at City Hall and are also found on the city's website at kenmorewa.gov/PRR for public records requests. The city must also publish a fee schedule for the cost of copying. This lays out the cost of making paper copies, scanning copies, uploading and transmitting digital files. The fees are also published on the city's website. Additional requirements of the PRA is the city must also maintain a list of laws the agency believes exempts or prohibits certain records and information from being disclosed to the public. An example of this would be records that are deemed attorney-client communications between the city and its attorney, or personal information such as the Social Security number. The city must also maintain a tracking log of PRRs. As the Public Records Officer, my job is to receive, process, track public records requests and to provide a timely response, which we will go into more detail in a moment. The Public Records Officer also manages the city code updates to the Public Records Chapter and arranges Public Records Act training for all staff and files an annual Public Records data report to the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee of the state. JLARC requires agencies with public records costs that exceed $100,000 per year to submit an annual report and costs on a variety of performance measures, including information on staff and costs in responding to PRRs. We will look at a few of these metrics in this update.
Great. On the screen, you'll see a very simple version of the life of a public records request. The requests the city receives from the public vary in complexity and vary in what types of records are requested. The basic life of a PRR follows the process of a member of the public submitting a public records request, the PRO assigning the request to a department, the search and collection of responsive records by staff, responding to the request, and of course, closing the request.
There's many ways to submit a public records request. The city does have an online form at kenmorewa.gov/PRR. A printed form or any written request can be submitted in person at City Hall or via an email to the PRO. Verbal requests can be accepted along with requester contact information. The requester must make it evident that they are submitting a request to inspect records and include a way for the city to communicate with the requester. The request should contain a description of identifiable records that they are seeking. And a request for information is different than a request for public records. And records requests should be received by and responded to by the PRO.
Now some data. In 2023, the city received 371 records requests from the public. Overall, the number of requests have been increasing over the past 10 years, and you can see data on the screen from 2020 on. What the data doesn't show is that in the past 2 years, we've seen an increase of complicated requests involving high volume of responsive records. Examples of complicated requests would be a request that starts off with the phrase "every and all records" before the description, or requests that involve hundreds or even thousands of responsive emails, which each email has to be reviewed by the PRO or attorney for protected information.
Now we'll take a look at the types of requesters. This is also data that's collected by JLARC, and it's information that's volunteered by the requester on the PRR form. If the requester chooses not to select one, they can choose to select other. The city does not require requesters to provide their name, and we do not typically ask why records are being requested. As you can see on the graph, on the pie chart, the majority of requests that Kenmore receives are from individuals, with businesses and organizations coming in a close second. We'll talk about the type of records being requested in an upcoming slide.
The next step of the life cycle of a request is the public records officer assigning the request to a department. Once the PRO determines that the request likely falls within city records, the request is assigned to a staff person in the department that the record lives in. Sometimes a request could involve multiple departments depending on the wording of the request. You'll see the 2023 breakdowns on the records being assigned to which department here. The majority of the records were assigned to development services this past year, which is the same in previous years. Most of these requests are related to building and land use permits, as well as code enforcement. A shift that we saw from 2022 to 2023, however, was the increase of the number of requests submitted to other departments within the city. The increase in these requests were mainly assigned to the city manager's department and city council related requests. And lastly, the 7% remaining of requests are for records that are not considered city records. These records are ones that are usually from other agencies such as the King County Sheriff's Office, North Shore Utility District, and King County for records before incorporation in 1998. Since we do get quite a few of these records, we have learned over the years who the agency is, so we can redirect the requesters.
Next, collecting the records. Ideally, the records are already available on the city's website, making it a quick response by providing the link to the website. A records search is performed by the custodian of the records being requested. The PRO reviews the records to confirm responsiveness and checks for information that may be exempt from disclosure. Typically, the type of records for Kenmore that have exempt information are attorney-client privilege communications. For these, the information is redacted and an exemption log is created citing the legal reason for non-disclosure. And finally, it is determined whether a copy fee will be applied to the installment of records. When the number of pages to be copied exceeds a threshold as set by the fee schedule, an estimated copy fee will be shared with the requester.
As Teresa mentioned in the last slide, some requested records are already available throughout the city's website. We also have a commonly requested records webpage where quick links are listed to find these records, such as city council related records, financial records, information about current city projects, and more. The screenshot on the slide shows the transparency page of the city website and the link below to access it. Next, the PRA requires a city to respond to the requester within 5 business days. This is referred to as the 5-day letter. The 5-day letter, which we most commonly send out as an email, acknowledges receipt of the request and notifies the requester of one of the following: If the responsive requests were easy and quick to find, within 5 days of the request, we're able to provide the responsive documents and close out the request by the 5 days. That can be in the form of attaching records to an email, providing a link to the records to be accessed, or letting the requester know that part of the responsive records are physical records, which can be viewed at City Hall. If the description of what the requester is, what the requester is looking for is unclear to the PRO or the staff person, we can ask for clarification of the request, and that ensures that we are providing the records that the requester is actually looking for. We can also notify the requester that additional time is needed to fulfill the records request with an explanation of why we need additional time. We also let them know when to expect the responsive records to be sent. This is likely the initial response when the request is complicated, like we said earlier, and involves a large volume of responsive records to gather and review. Sometimes with these complicated requests, we're able to provide responsive records in installments. We'll provide the records in batches, giving them the first installment and letting the requester know when they can expect the rest. And lastly, sometimes the request renders no records on our end. If the request is for records from a different agency, like we said, we'll redirect them to that agency or simply inform the requester that no records exist. The city is not required to create any new documents or records to fulfill a request that comes through.
Closing the request. Once the PRO determines the request has been responded to in full, she will close that request. The number of requests closed is another JLARC metric used in calculations for determining the time and cost of responding to PRRs. The bar graph on the right shows the average and median number of days it takes to close a request. Over the past 4 years, the average number of days to close is affected by a few requests that took longer than 100 days to complete. The median number of days indicate that the time it takes to fully respond to a request is increasing. This is due to the increased number of complicated requests and the high volume of responsive records to be reviewed before going out. In the past 4 years, the city has produced over 30,000 documents in response to public records requests. That number is most likely higher because in 2020 through 2021, individual emails were not counted as a record when it is. In 2023, the estimated time on responding to PRRs, as reported by 22 city staff members, the public records officer, and the city attorney for legal review, was just over 1,100 hours. It is estimated that each request took an average of 3 hours to respond. Again, this average is affected by a few large requests. JLARC defines the cost of responding to public records requests as a compilation of the agency's compensation, legal review costs, and supplies and services. As mentioned earlier, JLARC requires agencies to submit an annual report if they spend over $100,000 in responding to PRRs the previous year. From 2018 to 2021, the city came in under the threshold, but voluntarily reported. As you can see, in 2022, we spent over the threshold, so we were required to report. This was due to the increased need for attorney review and volume of attorney responsive records. Calculations for 2023 have yet to be prepared. However, per an initial evaluation, I suspect we will have spent under the threshold as our attorney costs were down in 2023 as compared to the previous year. The 2023 JLARC portal has just opened, so we will be completing that report by July 1.
And that concludes our update on the 2023 Kenmore Public Records requests, and we will take any questions or comments if you all have any.
Questions, comments? Councilor Lutzis?
Just a comment. Thank you both for all that you do. I know sometimes it's a very challenging and tedious thing to pour through records and go over thousands and thousands of documents, especially within the last couple of years. So I just wanted to thank you for all that you do for our city and our residents. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? Yeah, I'll reiterate what Councilmember Lutzis said. I also think it's really great how, under our leadership here, we've always just treated this as part of the cost of doing business as a city and making sure that we are as transparent and that our documents are available for the public to look over. So I appreciate all the work that you both put into this, and because I know it's not easy. I know sometimes you have to bug me to circle back with you over things. So I appreciate everything you put into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a public hearing. temporary use permit number TMP 24-0081 to allow interim temporary public works shop yard a construction and trade use to continue through 2024, presented by Public Works Operation Director Jennifer Gordon and Development Director Samantha Loyuk.
Good evening, City Council. Before you tonight, well, I'm Samantha Loyuk. I'm joined by Jennifer Gordon. And tonight you have a motion, or you have a proposed, hopefully a motion for the temporary use permit for a 1-year renewal. Kenmore Municipal Code Section 18.100.120 requires the City Council, followed by a public hearing, to make a decision on a temporary use beyond 90 days. Okay, so this is for the temporary use of the construction and trade use for the public workshop that is currently located at 6532 Northeast Bothell Way. And this request is coming in initially. They were planned to move, but for now they will remain in that location until their new location is ready. And at the earliest, that would be 2025. Jennifer can talk more about that if you have questions, but the application does fulfill the approval criteria set forth in the code. And we just give it to council if you have any questions, or is there anything you want to add, Jennifer?
I don't think so. Hopefully, we'll only have to come back for one more extension and then we'll be out of there.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, we will open up the public comment then. For the public comment, for the public hearing, people will be granted 3 minutes to speak. Same public comment rules apply, including say your name and city of residence, addressing your comments directly to the city council and not splitting your time with others. If your comments have already been fully expressed by preceding speakers, we encourage you to summarize your statements by saying your name, city of residence, and saying that I agree with the previous speaker. We hear testimony from our on-site guests first, followed by any pre-registered virtual guests. Thank you for taking the time to participate in the public hearing. I declare the public hearing open. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. We have no individuals signed up for on-site public hearing, and there were no pre-registered virtual either for public hearing.
Okay. Is there anybody on site who wishes to be heard on this? Anybody wishing to be heard? All right, last call. I'm declaring the public hearing closed. We'll now move on to the business agenda. First item there is temporary use permit TMP 24-0081 to allow interim temporary public works shop yard, a construction trade use to continue through 2024. Anything further to add?
Nothing to add.
Any questions? All right, seeing no questions. The chair would entertain a motion to approve temporary use permit number TMP 24-0081.
So moved.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take the roll?
On the motion to approve temporary use permit number TMP 24-0081, Councilmember Lutzis,
Yes.
Councilmember Culver,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Sassen,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes,
With 7 yeses and 0 nos, the motion passes.
thank you very much. Last item on our business agenda, Planning Commission's recommendations for comprehensive plan amendments, economic development element, presented by Community Development Director Debbie Bent, Principal Planner Todd Hall, and Planning Commissioners.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council. I'm Todd Hall. I'm the Principal Planner for Community Development Department. Director Bent should be joining us remotely this evening, so if there's any specific questions for her, she should be remote. Tonight, we bring forward to you the economic development element of the comprehensive plan, similar to the other elements that we brought forward late last year in 2023. Staff will provide a brief PowerPoint presentation, and then I'll hand it over to Chair Dwight Thompson and the planning commissioners who will present their recommendations for this element. So we'll go ahead and get started. So the economic development is one of 14 statewide planning goals under the Growth Management Act. The GMA goal encourages jurisdictions through comp plans and development regs to promote economic opportunity for all residents, especially for unemployed and disadvantaged people, promote the retention and expansion of existing businesses and recruitment of new businesses, and encourage growth in areas experiencing insufficient economic growth, all within the capacities of the state's natural resources, public services, and public facilities. GMA emphasizes coordination and consistency across comp plan elements to support a strong local economy. The Kenmore Comprehensive Plan's economic development element focuses on these key areas that are up on your screen, which include supporting local businesses, stimulating job growth, enhancing the city's tax base, and improving the economic well-being of Kenmore. So along with the purpose and the focus areas that I previously mentioned on the last slide, the element also contains goals and policies and objectives which serve to leverage Kenmore's competitive advantage and an objective of ensuring economic growth and vitality and a high quality of life. As is in the case with the other elements of the comprehensive plan, the economic development element must be consistent with both multi-county and county-wide planning policies. These being Vision 2050, which is adopted through PSRC or Puget Sound Regional Council, and the King County countywide planning policies or CPPs. Within the introduction, a new section about Vision 2020 has been included. This updates the Vision 2040 plan, which was the 30-year plan previously adopted by PSRC, and now this new version looks forward to 2050. One change to note specifically about Kenmore is the city is now identified as a high capacity transit community. This replaces the previously identified larger city regional geography that was in effect until 2022. HCT, or again, high capacity transit, as noted in Vision 2050, are cities and unincorporated areas that are connected to regional high capacity transit systems. In Vision 2050, there's 7 policy objectives which are targeted toward customized local economic policies and strategies. And these are all listed on page 4F-2 of the economic development element. King County CPPs include many policy concepts related to economic development, and similar to Vision 2050, the economic development element must be consistent with CPPs. So back in 2018, the city hired Community Attributes, which is an economic development consulting firm, to update the previously adopted economic development plan from the early 2000s. These goals, strategies, and actions were developed to help diversify, grow, and sustain Kenmore's economy. These include the following items on the screen, which are promote and differentiate Kenmore's image, grow new and existing businesses and target sectors, enable high-quality retail, office, and mixed-use development, leverage placemaking and livability for economic development, expand connectivity, access to the waterfront and multimodal transportation, and highlight Kenmore's welcoming business climate. In 2023, the city's executive department created a 3-pronged economic development approach. These approaches include be a well-run city, see strategic opportunities, and focus on key partnerships. And each of these are identified on the screen. So be well-run city, promote economic development, approachable and accessible, and well-maintained, well-planned community. For C, strategic, it's a be well positioned for the future, making an impact. And then lastly, on focus key partnerships, it's to engage and support key institutions. In the existing conditions section, which makes up the majority of the element, this provides a number of general information, data, and tables in these categories. Population and socioeconomic characteristics, housing and economic profile, employment, employment by industry, employment capacity, jobs to housing ratio, employment growth target, and finally taxable retail sales. In the SWOT analysis, or what we call in the planning department, or sorry, the planning commission chose to call it a SCOT analysis, which we changed to challenges instead of weaknesses. This is new recommendations for PSRC asked us to include this analysis. And on your screen, these include strengths, which are location at the top of Lake Washington, pleasant residential neighborhoods. We have an excellent school district in North Shore School District, Bastyr and other nearby universities, and then a strong local business presence. As far as challenges, of course, the 522 corridor is a large barrier to pedestrians and varying types of development that aren't auto-oriented, competition with neighboring cities, and then lack of a large-scale commercial office space. In terms of opportunities, we have excellent transportation connections, expanding a downtown core, promotion of Kenmore as a unique lakeside city, and then of course the Lake Point development, which is in discussion for potential development. And then threats, climate change, economic uncertainty, housing affordability, commercial affordability, and transition to online marketplace. So in terms of the process, the economic development element was originally presented to the Planning Commission in October of 2023. Their questions and comments were addressed at their November and December meetings, and then we presented also at the November Kenmore Business Alliance meeting. And then the Planning Commission held their hearing at mid-January. And then we received no comments from the Department of Commerce, PSRC, and Ecology regarding the SEPA checklist. And then lastly, the council will review and adopt these elements along with all the other elements later at the end of the year, because we can only adopt a comprehensive plan once per year. So we're bringing these each element at one at a time. So that concludes my presentation. So at this time, I'd like to hand it over to Chair Dwight Thompson, and he'll lead the discussion along with the planning commissioners on the economic development element. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Your Honor, Honorable Deputy Mayor and council members. We're very glad to be here tonight, finishing another piece of our docket. Tonight, we present to you the economic development element of the comp plan for your review and action. We have reviewed the current plan or the current element and made extensive edits and additions that have been outlined by our planner with the help of, Todd and Debbie Bent. We have, I believe, prepared a good draft element for you all to work on and put the finishing touches to. So a public hearing has occurred. The complete record and public comments are being transmitted as required by city code and state law. Part of the revision, as noted just prior to, during the presentation, is the revisions with the addition of the Vision 2050 PRSC section in the element, together with other descriptions of our community's economic and growth conditions. Tonight, 4 of our commissioners will present highlights of our work on the element. Commissioner Banazinski will discuss some talking points related to some of the city's joint meetings on the topic. Commissioner Olson will speak about the clean lighting concepts in the element. Commissioner Wyrick will highlight how the expansion is good for the community. And Commissioner Dorian will speak to the factual current conditions affecting this element. So I'll leave it to your desire, Your Honor, whether you wish us to finish the whole presentations before council comments or have them after each individual presentation.
Why don't we just go presentation to presentation and see if there are questions?
So I'd like to introduce Commissioner Banazinski as our first speaker.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. The planning goals presented in the economic development element remain the same as in the past. Support local businesses, stimulate job growth, enhance and broaden the city's tax base, and improve the economic well-being of Kenmore's residents. However, we as a planning commission are in unanimous agreement that how we plan for and achieve those goals must change. Economic development, climate change, ecosystem recovery, sustainability, affordable housing, healthcare access, and more can no longer be thought of as or addressed separately. Planning will lead to effective action only when we understand how these systems interact. The traditional drivers of economic development and job growth, manufacturing, retail expansion, and private and commercial property development are not as important as they once were. Brick and mortar retail is being replaced by online sales. Home-based businesses already dominate the employment sector in Kenmore, and the shift to remote or hybrid work for those who once commuted to offices is here to stay. Instead, successful efforts to address climate change, degraded ecosystems, environmentally unsustainable practices, housing shortages, and barriers to healthcare access will be important drivers of economic development and job creation moving forward. To thrive in this changing world, we believe that Kenmore will need to reconsider its land use policies and rebalance zoning, allowed usages, and development incentives to support these new drivers of economic growth. Thank you.
Next will be Commissioner Olson.
This evening, I wanted to talk about clean light manufacturing demand and that portion of the element. So as we just heard from Commissioner Banazinski, the way that we have approached economic development in the past needs to be adjusted going forwards in the future for a number of reasons. I wanted to highlight this because I think Kenmore has a significant manufacturing and industrial region that we have already seen begin to transition into these other types of uses. For instance, the Earthwise, we already have distribution services like the, I'm totally spacing on the name, the lumber distribution center and soil, as well as new businesses like Cairn, 192 Brewing, and Copperworks. I think it's important to continue to increase the diversity of these places and continue to focus on that manufacturing demand and the base there, and adaptively reuse that space to improve resiliency and continue to act as a hub that can be used for distribution of online goods, for instance. And that positions us well going into the future, especially given our location at the top of the lake, our connection to several different modes of transportation, and our location between some of the adjacent north side communities of the Seattle metro region. I suppose that's the bulk of it. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Wyrick will highlight how economic expansion is good for the community.
Thank you. So one thing that came up continuously in our conversations is the fact that we don't have a whole lot of commercial space to work with and to keep the maximized potential for the space as it does turn or become available. And the parts that we're going to be losing in the Todd locations to housing, but keeping mixed use in mind and making sure that that aligns and expands with the current capabilities that we have. We just don't have very much commercial space here in Kenmore, and we're probably not going to see a lot of neighborhoods wanting to convert to commercial uses. We love Kenmore for what it is. We're not asking for that to change drastically, but one thing that is blatantly obvious is what we have potential for needs to be guarded very carefully. And the other piece is how the city presents itself as a friend to the industries that are looking to come in to the city to do business and to make sure that we are making things as easy as possible for those to do business with us and to reach the businesses that are here that we still have not made contact with. We know that the largest portion of our businesses here in Kenmore are actually home-based businesses, and we're still struggling to connect with all of them to even realize what those businesses are and what our potentials are to help them and to help them grow. So there are a lot of opportunities here to expand the business base in Kenmore. And of course, as we all live here in Kenmore, we would love to see some of this healthy business tax revenue take a little bit of the burden off of the property tax portion of currently the bedroom community making up the difference on. So a lot of opportunity here, very valuable insight and focus. We're really hoping, we're pushing for, and it seems that the interest is there for you as well. But I can personally say, I think the city is moving in the right direction. We have the Kenmore Business Alliance that when compared to other regions, they are jealous of the city's support for the small businesses and the way that they interact. I have personally heard of 2 individuals looking to move to Kenmore because of the way they were delighted to find that they supported small businesses in that way, that the city not only says that they are listening to the small businesses, but they literally show up. We've had council members at the last probably 4 straight Kenmore Business Alliance meetings to listen and to bring that back. So it's, and then this was about 2 months ago, there was a outreach to the local businesses, consulting individuals met with us to ask what was on our concern list, what we needed for support, and that was a first for me. And I know a lot of other businesses that were in the room really appreciated that. So I think we're doing the right things. We would like to see that continue and to stay at the forefront of the council's mind.
Thank you very much. And our 4th speaker is Commissioner Dorian.
Thank you. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members, as you consider our draft of the economic development element, I would like to highlight that the Growth Management Act calls for the promotion of 2 things as part of economic development planning goals. First, planning goals should promote economic opportunity for all people of this state, especially for unemployed and for disadvantaged persons. And secondly, planning goals should promote the retention and expansion of existing businesses and recruitment of new businesses. That language comes directly from the GMA. And although those aims are not necessarily expressed in priority order, it is of note which one is included first in the law guiding our comprehensive planning. Therefore, I would draw your attention to the socioeconomic data included in the element. It is not simply required front matter before we get to the data and recommendations about businesses. Rather, it is the foundation of our economic development planning. Some key points in that data. Kenmore has a population soon to exceed 25,000, with an estimated population of 24,448 residents as of September 2023. Those residents form 9,505 households. Data from 2021 shows the median household income in Kenmore was $121,463, but that is just part of the story. The income bands provide a more complete picture. 54% of households in Kenmore had an income of over $100,000 in 2021. 23% of households had an income of over $200,000. However, 46% of households had an income of less than $100,000, and 21% had income less than $50,000. As the draft reminds us, housing affordability is a large factor in community success. Households that are cost burdened struggle with personal economic success and also have less funds available to contribute to the local economy. We have a responsibility to plan for economic development that includes all socioeconomic segments of our community. In fact, it stood out to me that the GMA language suggests we must do so equitably. And you'll see language throughout the element where the Planning Commission has been careful to include the terms sustainable and inclusive in front of economic development for that very reason. And that means both enabling employment and opportunity within Kenmore and enabling access to employment and opportunity beyond Kenmore. The data estimates that there are 4,583 jobs in Kenmore, but most of the people employed in those jobs, over 95%, are not residents of Kenmore. Inflow and outflow data from the census shows our dynamics. In 2021, 2,791 people from outside of Kenmore reported commuting to Kenmore to work. Only 234 residents of Kenmore reported working in Kenmore. Employment by an organization is not the only path to opportunity in Kenmore, though. Of the 1,198 businesses in Kenmore, 66% are home-based, which has already been mentioned in something that came up a few times in discussions. However, it is the case that most of our residents find employment and opportunity outside of the city. From census data, 9,006 people in Kenmore reported commuting elsewhere to work, which is 3.5 times the amount who commute in and around 40 times the amount who both live and find employment in Kenmore. The jobs these Kenmore residents commute to outside of Kenmore are often jobs in industries that are unlikely to develop on-the-ground presences in Kenmore. And as I'm sure you're aware, that makes Kenmore a bedroom community with a 1 to 2 jobs to housing ratio. For a bedroom community to thrive, it must be an attractive place to live, with infrastructure and businesses that align with residents' aspirations outside of work. And also things like placemaking via conscious development of third places like the hangar and the community space there, and the inclusion of public art. But again, all of this has to be for all the economic segments of our community. It's important to remember that Kenmore is home to 2 large stores where our residents can shop for groceries. Many shop at Safeway, but our community also has a large number who shop at the grocery outlet. Others in our community may engage in the majority of their grocery shopping at other local stores, such as Dollar Tree. Still others may prefer to shop at PCC in Canyon Park or at the QFC in Inglewood Village, and others may need to shop further afield for culturally relevant food options. As an example of economic development implementation, for our community to thrive, all of those options should continue to be supported, and new economically viable and culturally relevant grocery offerings should be enabled where possible. Prior to my appointment, the Commission has done excellent work on the economic element, making it, in my opinion, the most complete economic strategy document that Kenmore has, as it covers both of those planning goals required by the GMA for economic development. Therefore, we hope you will not just adopt the recommendations for the element, but also use these amended recommendations to inform in-progress items pertaining to the economic growth of the city. Thank you.
Your Honor and council members, we wish to thank you for your time and ability to present our elements to you. One item that we are sure you folks know, but we'd like to reinforce it, is that this element, as well as other elements which we are working on and have presented, need to be implemented in a concurrent manner. Because if our view on the commission is that if the policies of our city do not work well together to encourage the proper growth and vitality of our city. One strength may be create the greatest weakness of another element. And we hope that you folks, and we've seen a lot of work in your case on making sure that the concurrence happens. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Councilmember Culver?
Yeah, thank you for this. I enjoyed it. Have a few thoughts. There was one point that starts with businesses that provide living wage jobs. I think I know the answer to this, but do we collect any data on, roughly like businesses that do or don't, or like, is there any way we can make that actionable, I guess?
I don't know the answer to that right off the top of my head. I know that we get a lot of our data through state and or local data sets. We might be able to go down into a more granular, but I can certainly see if we can, determine, if those are in that living wage category or not, but more to come. Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. Okay, cool. Something else that jumped out at me similarly, and I'm guessing this is a research project in and of itself. The NAICS codes of different industries. What do these companies do? What do they produce? Like whatever. I don't know if something like this exists, but like it would be interesting to see a sort of histogram of like how many businesses do we have in the seaplane industry, for example, using an easy one. And then what does Kenmore look like compared to other cities? Or in other words, are there prevalent businesses in other cities that we don't have here that might be good? Like, ooh, like that would be good to expand into. I'm sure that's a research rabbit hole in and of itself, but I thought I would throw that out there. I will pause there for now. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Sasson.
In a year where your docket is incredibly heavy, I think you should be very proud of the work that you've done on this particular piece. I am impressed and I'm grateful for the intellect and the thoroughness that you each bring. And I appreciate how hard you're working. So on behalf of our city and the council, I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, I'm similarly very, very impressed, and I always am with you guys. And I actually want you each to respond to a question, but the preliminary question, and I don't know who wants to respond, maybe Chair or Todd. There's, in the earlier part, there's the strategy and approach, which is in the introductory section. And, from 2018, and it lists half a dozen goals. And then there's the, 3 approaches, which are more kind of how you do the things. But I'm wondering where are those 6 goals represented? So that's my overarching question. And then the other question, in addition to being super impressed by this, I'm actually even more impressed by what you just said to us. And so my other question that I'm just getting to is, for each of you, Derek and Tracy and Chris and David, for each of the things that you brought up, where do you feel like the goals and objectives cover it? And if so, where? Because I didn't always, what you were saying, I was thinking, oh, where is that? And I'm not sure I saw it. So I just want to make sure that what you expressed to us is actually represented. But the overarching question first about those 6 goals.
I'm going to ask Todd to, that's a question that we
So,
asked you.
Yeah, Councilmember, just to clarify, so on page 4F-3, it looks
exactly.
like those 6 bullets. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. To be honest, I need to like spend a little bit more time to kind of, I haven't looked at this element and since we've last been with the planning commission. So if I may, I can certainly look in this a little bit further, but if any of the planning commissioners want to address any of these specific ones now, I welcome your comments and feedback.
I think it's maybe just something, if you haven't exactly addressed it, that, when you go back and take that kind of final look, say, oh, well, that was one. Did we kind of, marry that up to an objective? And yeah. But yeah.
Well, on the concerns that I gave example of, a lot of that had to do with the entirety of the document where we want to keep the opportunities to be sought after, to engage with new business opportunities, to, I don't like the word manipulate, but to help soften some of the development projects, maybe to leave room for the right kinds of multi-use and so forth. So it was a lot of change this word and change that word to keep things proactive and positive and opportunistic, where we found words in the document initially that may have been a little more rigid or directed at maybe one industry or one identifier, and we wanted to back away from that to leave room, because we don't want to have to create this document every 3 months. We want it to have legs and live and have a life that we hoped we could convey that got the point across. So a lot of it had to do with just restructuring the words to make sure that the message came through.
I believe a part of this is has to do with prior work that could not be removed yet because we had not got to the position of changing certain goals. Am I correct with regard?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was well, not to make excuses, but I'm, still a newbie. So I had a huge learning curve. But one of the things that I noticed that there was a lot of things that when I was going through the information, that there were things that were left out from prior work. And so I did want to include that in this document, one of which, well, 2 is the new strategy from 2023, but also this 2018 work, which was done by Community Attributes. And that's, Councilmember Shrevenick, that whole section was added. So I agree, I could probably go through there and see how I can like fine tune it and see, where these are interrelated. But in terms of, that I wanted to capture the effort and the work that was done on that, because it wasn't really talked about or wasn't even included whatsoever in this last element. And so I felt it was necessary to talk about that and also kind of, match it up with a lot of what PSRC says, because, they have an entire economic development strategy book that I went through extensively, and to make sure that the goals and policies that we updated matched theirs to the best that we could, knowing that, as some of the commissioners said, Kenmore is a little bit of a unique situation because we are a smaller community. We don't have the same amount of commercial space that some of our neighbors do. But to the best of our ability, we want to try to achieve, what is it that we can accomplish in our small commercial corridor. So, yeah, it was a little bit of a of a fact-finding kind of thing, piecing these together. But I'm sure Debbie and I can go back and as we bring the next element later on this year, before you all review the final document and then ultimately approve it, that we can, piece these together. So hopefully that makes
Yeah,
some
and I
sense.
think, oh, go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to make a closing comment, but yeah.
I just think one thing is that from the work that the commission did and the data that they got, and plus the new Vision 2050, there may not be a one-to-one between those 2018 goals and the ultimate goals and implementation. There will be a lot of resonance, obviously, because we're the same city. But for example, with the retail trends from the Great Recession, And then office trends from the Great Recession, that there's some kind of reevaluation that has to go on with elements of that. And then 2050 brings in quite a few new planning goals around, I think, women, minority-owned businesses is one, climate and sustainable. So there's some new things we have to come to that 2018 work with, I think, but it's definitely in there.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to voice that as well. A piece of why clean light manufacturing was interesting to me is historically we have often siloed and protected industrial areas and actively limited what types of uses can be there to try and potentially keep property values down in order to reduce the chances that those businesses might be pushed out. And while I think it can be important to protect those types of businesses, especially ones that might have lower margins, that can also limit some of the other approaches that we need to make for the city's economic development in the long run. A piece of that, though, is we can highlight it. We've seen that with like the Brew Row, where we have this spectacular connection with the trail, and cyclists and people passing through Kenmore can more easily interface with Kenmore because they don't have to cross the highway to get to that location. So I think that while this is just a piece of this puzzle, as Commissioner Dorian said, it resonates throughout. And while individual items here might need to be, reevaluated and figured out going forwards, overall, I think it does fundamentally address those goals, whether that's promoting a differentiating image, growing new businesses. This is another key piece of clean and light manufacturing. A lot of the home-based businesses need a place to go. And we have cheaper real estate in that area, partly as a result of what we've done in the past. And so by opening that up and encouraging those businesses that are doing well, that are home-based businesses that need a place to expand, can find a place to expand in those places. In this kind of previous industrial area that we have that's shifting, I'm not sure how it addresses high quality retail, but I think it could definitely address mixed use development. That does not necessarily mean it needs to be housing and commercial space, although I could definitely see some type of industrial and commercial space fusion going on, like we've seen with Earthwise, for instance. I also think it can leverage placemaking. We can change the way 175th is set up and locations around that, once again, to further promote connectivity and permeability from the trail to businesses in that location. Yeah. And that also is answering your second question.
Yeah, thanks. I would just encourage, all of you to, on those things that you really do prioritize, make sure that they are not just in that overview, but they are represented in the goals and objectives, because that's actually the bread and butter of this. The rest is context. So I would just encourage you to think about that. And there were two other small things, there's comments. One is, I think it's the very last objective, calls out a specific business. And while I love that specific business, I think, just think about, is that what we want to do, one business in our entire city, elevating it in that way? It's something to think about. And then I also want to riff on Councilmember Culver's comment of measurement. I am also a measurement person, and it would be great if these, if you thought about maybe a couple of measures, not measuring everything, but what would be, if you had to pick 2 or 3 of your most important things, and of course, what you measure is, becomes magical. So you want to really think about what's crucial, and think about what those measures might be. Maybe it's the, jobs to housing ratio, maybe it's meeting our growth targets for jobs, whatever it is. Maybe set up your goals and objectives to lean into what you think those measures could be.
If I may address your first comment, Councilmember Srebnick, on and just to clarify that you're referring to objective ED-13 on so the one regarding Kenmore's Air Harbor. So So this was an interesting one, and we had a lengthy conversation about that. So, yeah. So there's the Kenmore Air business, and there's an apostrophe S is Kenmore's Air Harbor. The Air Harbor is a place. And so while it is it does have the business name in there, the commission as a whole agreed, and back me up on this, but we did talk about this for almost 20 something minutes.
It's a site.
Yeah, and so it is a site, and it is cited in other documents, and so that's why this specific place, although it does have a business name in it, but the apostrophe S hopefully differentiates the business from the place. So I don't know if anybody else wants to, does that make sense?
Commissioner Olson, do you want to get into this?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
I think it kind of gets to
Just jump in.
Councilman Culver's point about how we identify that, because one of the parts of that discussion was multiple businesses make up Kenmore's Air Harbor. Not all of it is Kenmore Air, is my understanding. That being said, I don't have that particular data in front of me at the moment, so I can't speak more to what I am remembering. And having a breakdown of what businesses we have that are, potentially background businesses supporting other businesses could be valuable, I think.
We did eliminate a lot of names, by the way. I just wanted you to know that. And I also wanted Councilmember Spurgeon to say that we spent at least 45 minutes discussing the first item that you brought up about all of the length of, what would I say it, this items that we wanted to specify, and all of those things that you brought up. We had similar concerns, and talking about the policy itself. We tried to make the policy somewhat broad, as we are, and especially the council, is struggling with a lot of individual policies that affect different areas of the community. And we have not received specific instructions as to which to provide the most, the greatest emphasis to. And so we did not want to bring a document to you that was directive to the community or putting certain policies on top of others. We don't see, unless you tell us so, that that's our job. We're trying to follow your lead on that, because I believe the council's the policymakers in that area, not us, unless you want to ask us to do certain things.
Councilmember Lucis?
Just to address Councilmember Shrevenick's point, that was actually one of my last comments as a planning commissioner, was going through and picking out the names of businesses and starting that conversation on Kenmore Air Harbor and what that meant. So I'm on the same wavelength as you there, and I had the exact same concern. That's why we hashed that all out. So I just want to quickly begin by saying thank you to the Planning Commission. This is always a lot of work, and we always appreciate the time and effort that you put in. I must say it's a little bittersweet being on this side and looking at you guys now instead of being alongside of you. But nonetheless, thank you for all of the work you did in bringing it through the finish line. There's not too much I have to pick apart with this, since I kind of helped draft most of it.
Well, you get 2 shots at it, so that's
Two
more than
shots,
we
that's
do.
right. The first thing that I did notice, was that under the countywide planning policies, and this is on page 4F-3, under the topics that should be addressed, or let's see, topics that should be addressed include, and then there's dashes. It's the fifth dash down under human resources. I'm looking at the last line there that says that we should improve cultural diversity, job training, and education. And what caught my eye there is job training, because like all of you, I understand the need when it comes to economic development resides and rests on a lot of things. And when you talk about a topic such as how affordable housing plays into that and supporting our lower income residents, how do we do that? And job training seems to be a potential thing that fits nestled nicely in there. And so I was looking through the document and I didn't happen to see anything else except under objective ED7, which is the objectives emphasize climate action plan strategies during economic development decision-making, specifically policy ED7.2, which says support green job training and continuing education opportunities for economic vulnerable job sectors. Now, my question to the commission, I know this is a long lead up to that. Was there a discussion when it came to general job training, or was this the only discussion about job training specifically for green jobs?
Oh, there you are. Okay, go ahead.
Just looking, so the only other thing that I see immediately, just on an immediate look, ED1, ED 1.3, through, which is page 4F24, through cooperative planning efforts with other agencies support community-based actions to involve minorities, women, and economically disadvantaged individuals in improving their economic future. I guess we could call out job training within that policy and as an example of something that, yeah.
I noticed some of those vaguer policies throughout, but they don't specifically say this is the actionable strategy we can implement to do this. It might say, helping identify, or excuse me, let's see, which one was that? Through cooperative planning, support and things like that. But what does support mean? And so I feel like job training could potentially be an idea, a relevant policy that could be called out specifically. I not just in green development, but maybe more generally when it comes to helping our residents. So I'm not sure if there's discussion on that or at all, or any other thoughts or opinions.
Having worked in the area of job training and rehabilitation and vocational type services for many years, job training is a tough nut to crack, because you can have more informal, like on-the-job training. If you have on-the-job training, usually that's in onesies, twosies. Often those are at a low-level service area that's easier to implement. The higher technical level, like learning to brew beer, takes a long time and an investment of both the employer. I don't mean to pick on him, but he's sometimes easy to pick on. It's not only an investment of the individual coming to hope to learn a skill, but it's a major investment on the employer for time, and you have to pay wages. There's no freebies now under the Employment Security Department. You have to pay at least a minimum wage, and of course we know that minimum wages don't really pay the bills. So I wanted to give you an idea with regard to industry, OJT, or training. I mean, Bastier's a big part of, quote, training, and look how expensive that is. And I mean, that's a positive thing for Bastier. They're doing a great job. But that's an example of dedicated funds per student or per worker to get them out on the street. And so if you want to do projects like that, we need to know who we're going to partner with to make those types of opportunities happen. I have some ideas, but they're not easy to do. I just got to tell you, they're not easy to do. It's very difficult.
So if I may follow up really quickly, since Chair Thompson, you happen to be, have some experience when it comes to occupational rehabilitation and job training, do you feel that that would be a useful element to economic development within a community, like a resource? Not getting into the specifics or the weeds of that. I'm just.
Well, where we could start is to develop information and a resource within our city, not necessarily government, but someone who knows how to do this and that can assist employers in putting a narrow program in that is going to be at their lowest cost to them, but the best outcome for the potential worker. And that I think would be the best way to do, because right now we don't have an industry in our city that is going to be able to put out 10 workers a year. It's just, I don't see it. Commissioner Srebnick has, some experience in the commerce area that I know. I mean, where you work, I mean, you might some things may come across your desk from time to time, and other folks on the other council members, excuse me, also may have opportunity to see work papers on such topics, but we need some sort of a lead to get going on it. It's not going to happen by magic.
And to speak a little bit more to that, we did just have I can't even recall where the press release came from, but I just came across a press release regarding Kenmore Air, the business, not the location. And they were speaking to a internship of a person who was just receiving some sort of airplane maintenance certification of a younger working individual there that they were very proud to have gotten through this program and is still there and working with them. So they do appear to have some sort of a program as such.
I think we're getting a little lost into what I was saying, and maybe I can clarify it as I make my final point here. So I see that under countywide planning policies, it said that we should look at job training as a potential element. Looking through our objectives and policies, the only place I see job training is under green job training. So I know that that was at least discussed among the commission. And so I was curious if there was a reason why it wasn't just discussed more broadly as potentially another general policy or objective somewhere that could say explore opportunities and partnerships that provide occupational training and rehabilitation for residents, or something to that extent. I'm just, that was sort of my point, is I noticed a little bit of absence there, and I think that could be a useful skill, not getting into the specifics of who we want a partnership just yet, but exploring opportunities and partnerships.
I think I follow what you're getting at, is one resource I do know of that many communities have an office in there is WorkSource, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard of that. They provide, so what we could do is put a policy, a general policy that says work with partners such as WorkSource or something like that, that provides training services for veterans, for, disadvantaged folks, et cetera. We could craft something that I think speaks to what you're getting at but doesn't get too specific on what Kenmore specifically is going to be doing, which I think is what Commissioner Thompson was getting at.
Well, we could also include labor and industries.
Yeah.
We could include community, more community college type of programs that do have a vocational aptitude. You have, and you actually have voc techs that you could, there are opportunities, but it's not going to happen without some of effort.
Absolutely, no, and I mean, that's the beauty of the comprehensive plan is it's what are goals and objectives and what would we love and everything. And so again, it was just a question is if that was a consideration, a topic of discussion and coming into compliance with the countywide recommendations for us, but that's something that we can hash out a little bit later. But again, I'm getting into the doing the nitpicks here because it's, again, I'm very thankful for all of your time and effort to go through this. It's a lot of work, I know. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate my colleagues' thanks for all of your work. I've said it before, I'll continue to say it. The council could not operate it without the planning commission doing all this work. Otherwise, all we would do is spend our time on comp plan and zoning. And so thank you very much for all the work on this. It's top quality. I just have two small things, and I think they're relatively small. Page 20, under strengths, I think it would be nice, and I think it's a strength that we have as a community, adding in recognizing the Burke-Gilman Trail as a strength that we can build off of. And then on page 21, there's opportunities, and I think we might want to call out the incoming bus rapid transit as a possible opportunity. Other than that, I think it's a great document. So thank you very much for all of your work on that. Councilmember Sassen?
Yeah, a couple things. I just wanted to thank our chair for mentioning Best Year, which is essentially a vocational training program, having been faculty there. And I want to call out the job training model of Black Coffee Northwest, which is no longer in Shoreline, unfortunately, but is setting up shop in the Central District of Seattle. But I think that as a model for all kinds of community engagement is something that we should be tracking. And then lastly, I would like to see this question about how can we partner with businesses. I'd like to take that to the Kenmore Business Group and float it there and then see what maybe could come back. Anyway, that's all. Thank you.
We take this in small steps. I think it can work. Honestly, I really do believe that.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Culver.
I got a couple more. This might be too in the weeds, but I liked the Scott, not the SWAT, the Scott. Two things. First, it has to do with Lake Point, and we got Commissioner Dorian touched on this a bit with office space and stuff. But there's been talk of other uses too. Would it be too in the weeds for the comp plan, or where would be an appropriate place to talk about how previous efforts there have gone? Obviously, there's something of the old man in the sea, I think, of like trying and trying, so like somewhere there being like a history of like, here's what they were after, here's where that went sideways, whatever, lessons learned to help sculpt some of that thinking of like, cool, like we shouldn't go after A and B, that has not gone well, let's talk about C, D, F, G, whatever. Something to think about. I would also say similarly on lessons learned, the business incubator. I don't know all the history there, but knowing that some of the language has been like, hey, we want to encourage this, help businesses start up, et cetera, and just better understanding what we learned from that project, that effort could be interesting. So I don't know if the comp plan is the right place for that, but I would throw it out there. So thank you.
I'm not sure if we're able to speak about Lake Point at this point.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I see that, or I've been told that Ms. Bent's hand is up virtually.
Yes, good evening, Council virtually. So I've been taking notes of the questions from council this evening, which either are data questions, questions about monitoring, clarifying some objectives, adding possibly a new objective. So taking in council's questions this evening, the next step in this process would be the planning commission sort of handing over their recommendation to you. So the next step for Todd and I is to then provide a response to the questions we've heard tonight and come back, and we can then let you know then if we would then recommend changes to the document, if the data is available, or if we add a new policy. Right now, that is currently scheduled for next week, and I think we might need possibly a little bit of more time than next week, but we'll do our best to try and get a response for next week. And if not, we might recommend pushing that out a couple of weeks so that we can take a little bit more time and flesh that out.
Makes sense. Deputy Mayor?
I actually just wanted to chime in on the job training development piece. First, to thank for the inclusion of it on the environmental climate action side, which is incredibly important. I also just want to tie into, I like the idea of expanding the breadth of where we're placing an emphasis on job training, development, creation. There is Bastyr. We clearly do have a lot of economic development work to do in our city with downtown, potentially Lake Point, other areas with culverts and all sorts of other construction type work. So I like the idea of finding a space to expand a little emphasis on job creation through, we have to have skilled labor in order to do the work. And if we can have people learning how to do the work through apprenticeships and other programs here in Kenmore and living here, having a base for that here, finding ways of doing that, I fully support. I think I heard that from others on the council, but I'm a little worn down today, so I was sitting back and being quiet. But I really think that having people with the skills to perform the work that needs to be done is incredibly important and will serve. And I feel like you did capture it, but I like the idea of a little expanded breadth there. So, and I will just say we are I am, and I know this council is, Nigel already said it, grateful to the dedication you have to our city, the depth and breadth of work that you do and bring to the table. I was really impressed that we didn't have more to say or question because your work is so good. So thank you. And David, your details in your presentation earlier were outstanding. I can't point to them, but thank you for what you highlighted because it was very beneficial just from me in this chair, and I'm sure the rest of the council. Each of you brought something to the table, but there was something in there and I can't get to the weeds on it right now, but it stood out. So thank you.
Councilor Marshall.
You know what? One thing that totally struck me is I don't think I can remember if I wasn't paying attention close enough, it's my fault, but I know that an environmental emphasis in a business-oriented plan is amazing to me. Okay, I just want to thank you guys for that. That's incredible and it's massively important.
Any further comments or questions? All right. Thank you so much for all of your work. Thank you for coming tonight. Really appreciate it.
We appreciate all your attention and good luck with this.
Thank you for your feedback.
Of course. Thank you. Staff report.
Thank you so much. So I do have a prepared statement that was prepared by City Manager Rob Carlinzi and City Engineer John Vicente about the 193rd slip lane closure. So I'd like to read that and then that'll be in the record for tonight's meeting. For the last 9 months, the right turn slip lane on 193rd Street going on to southbound 61st Street has been closed and used for staging and storage for the culvert replacement project across the street. Prior to its closure, the slip lane has been directly associated with approximately 2/3 of the crashes at that intersection, including multiple injury crashes over the last 10 years. As a result, this right turn slip lane will continue to be closed indefinitely. We realize that this change has resulted in additional delay for motorists traveling east on 193rd Street. However, under the City Council's direction, safety now outweighs vehicle throughput. Based on what we observed for the last 9 months of the slip lane's closure, we believe the risk of future crashes will be significantly reduced. In fact, since the slip lane's closure last July, only one right turn related crash has occurred at the intersection, which is almost a 70% drop in right turn crashes overall for the entire intersection. We can't ignore these facts and can't in good conscience return the intersection to its prior state. When Kenmore's main arterial roads were constructed in the mid-1900s, road engineers emphasized vehicle throughput and speed over anything else. Accommodating more vulnerable road users such as pedestrians and cyclists was a secondary afterthought, if even a thought at all. As a result, many arterials were built with slip lanes that resemble on and off ramps on freeways. Prioritizing throughput and speed over safety has resulted in untold deaths, injuries, and human suffering over the decades. The days of throughput as the #1 priority are over, and the days of arterial on and off ramps are numbered as well. While we continue to monitor this intersection and make modifications, yes, in fact, we will be increasing the radius for the new right turn to improve more turning space for southbound vehicles. This modification is hopefully going to be accomplished by the end of April. We're also looking at the operation of the intersection to determine if we need to make additional changes, and if so, what those changes might be, with the anticipation they will be completed as part of the 61st Avenue Sidewalk Replacement Project in 2025, unless a simple solution is determined and therefore earlier. This month marks the 10th anniversary of the deaths of Caleb Shoup and Sarah Paulson. These two young Kenmore residents were struck and killed in intersections within just a few days of each other. Caleb was killed just 3 blocks south of the 193rd slip lane. We have not forgotten these tragedies, and the City Council continues to make traffic safety a top priority. The City Council's Target Zero resolution is alive and well, and we will continue to be aggressive in making Kenmore streets more safe for all users, even if it means reducing throughput of cars. And that's signed Rob Carlenzi and John Vicente. Thank you. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Next, we have Councilmember reports and comments. Councilmember Culver.
Nothing to add, just happy to be here. Thank you.
Councilmember Marshall.
Nothing to report. Thank you.
Councilmember Sassen.
Happy to be here.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Nothing to report, thanks.
Councilmember Lucis.
Yes, a couple of things really quickly. Just as always, thank you to our excellent city staff for all the hard work that they do and helping the city to run as smoothly as it does. Thank you to our residents for staying involved and engaged. And then a couple of updates regarding regional committees for the Seashore Transportation Forum. King County Metro is reminding folks to sign up for route alerts with any cold weather in the future to make sure you plan ahead using their cold weather tools to know the snow routes and everything, just in case there's a threat, although I think we're starting to get towards the end of that. Also for Sound Transit, April 27th marks the opening of the East Link light rail segment, which goes from Bellevue to Redmond. So be sure to check that out. They're gonna have a full day of community events and things like that to explore and familiarize yourself with this new transportation method on the east side. As for the East Side Transportation Partnership, King County Metro has recently broken ground on a new electric metro facility down in Tukwila, which is exciting. And that is all I have to report. So thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor.
Last week, I guess it was just a week ago, I was in Washington. Mayor Herbig will have something to say, and I actually thought our deputy city manager might have mentioned it, so I would have been given the reprieve from the update. But anyway, we had a great trip. Probably the highlight for me was being, and I think it was good for our city that our deputy city manager was there. We were able to meet with our federal representative, Congresswoman Susan Del Bene, as well as staff for Senators Murray and Cantwell, where we were able to actually get really positive response from our federal requests, in particular money towards culvert replacements that we were talking about, and the public workshop. And what we were able to highlight was the incredible importance of this public workshop for the long-term development of Kenmore and our commitment to the Climate Action Plan. And it felt really good. And I'm going to look to our Deputy City Manager. I think we got some nice heads nodding in our presentations, and it felt good. So hopefully we'll have some nice return on that trip. We also were there with Kenmore Air, with David Gudgel from Kenmore Air, related to some issues that they've been working on as well. So there was an interesting presentation that I went to on oh gosh, cybersecurity. It's something that we all hear a lot about. But the cool thing, and I did share the name of the company with our city manager. I think it's 418, which is a cybersecurity apprenticeship program, which is actually King County, Seattle area is actually leading, and Tacoma, kind of leading edge on this apprenticeship program, which this work, cybersecurity work, identifying fraud, preventing exposures to corporations, is a really great area for job creation. And the cool thing is we're talking 90-day, I think it's 90-day training, 3-month training program, 3-month training program for people who can be maybe graduating from high school, retail jobs, restaurant, with actually earning out of training, earning potential of 100,000 a year, which I thought was incredibly interesting. I think about cybersecurity and go, so complicated, but there is such a need for this work. There's actually a dearth. There aren't enough people with the skills to do this work. And so I was kind of excited to hear about it, and I'm hopeful that maybe we can find some way of bringing this sort of a program to Kenmore. And I think that's it. I'm just really grateful for the beautiful sun, and really outstanding work for our planning commission today. I think that was, and Teresa's work with public records. That was an outstanding presentation this morning, at the beginning, not morning. I mentioned I'm very tired tonight. I'm getting over something. So anyway, thank you.
I don't have a ton to report that hasn't already been reported. ETP was actually quite nice because it was actually in person at Redmond City Hall, or mostly in person, I should say. And it was nice to actually see a lot of our colleagues from other cities in person and be able to chit chat a little bit and have that connection, because you just don't get that same connection when you're talking to people through Zoom. So that was good. The trip to the National League of Cities and DC was, as Deputy Mayor said, it was fruitful. We heard from the president, Secretary Buttigieg. They really were leaning in hard on, and have obviously heard from a lot of cities about the need for investment in infrastructure, because nobody has the money to keep up the infrastructure that we currently have without massive federal support. Also participated in meetings with our federal delegation, and was able to thank Representative Del Benny for the $1.3 million that she secured for the fish culvert replacement over on 192nd. Also pleased to report that she still has the Kenmore picture painting that former Mayor Baker gave her ages ago. It's still up in her lobby, and she made a big point of pointing it out to me. But good conference. I just really wish that folks on the East Coast would not schedule conferences over spring forward, because that really made the week very difficult. For a 3-hour change is bad enough. A 4-hour change is almost debilitating. Other than that, great trip. And with that, the Kenmore City Council is going to go back into executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110(1)(I). The council will now enter an executive session to discuss potential litigation. The executive session is slated to last approximately 20 minutes. No final action is expected. All right, with nothing more to come before us, the Kenmore City Council is adjourned.